All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the November 23rd, 2020 meeting of the Wilmington Board of Selectmen. Being as it is 7:05, I'll call the meeting to order. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and general laws, Chapter 38, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. Members of the public who wish to watch and listen to the meeting may do so in the following manner. WCTV, Channel 9, Comcast, Xfinity, Channel 37, Verizon Fios, and live stream at wctv.org. This meeting of the Wilmington Board of Selectmen is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. Members of the public who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may also do so via telephone by dialing 1-646-558 8656 and enter meeting ID 865-8810-0054, then press pound and press pound again at the next voice prompt. Members of the public attending this meeting virtually will be allowed to make comments if they wish to do so during the portion of the meeting designated for public comment by following the steps previously noted, then press *9 on their telephone keypad. This will notify the meeting host that the caller wishes to speak. All callers using this feature will be placed in queue in the order in which they enter the prompt. In the event that, despite our best efforts, we are not able to provide real-time access, we will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as we are able. I'll note that all votes will be roll call in alphabetical order, and I do want to thank John O'Neill from our IT department and our friends at WCTV for broadcasting this meeting. The board is reconvening after going into executive session for the purpose of discussing collective bargaining strategy with respect to the International Association of Firefighters Local 1370 in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 38, Section 21A3, as an open meeting may have had a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the town, as so determined by the chairman, and further to consider executive session minutes from April 13, 2020, July 20, 2020, August 17, 2020, and September 14, 2020, in accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 38, Section 22. I will go through roll call. Selectman Bendel.
Good evening.
Selectman Kyra.
Here.
Selectman DePalma.
Here.
Selectman O'Mahony.
Yeah.
And I am present as well, and I would ask that you join me in rising for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America
and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We do have transmitting of the Treasury warrants, numbers 20, 20A, 20B, 21, and 21A. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Bendel. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. O'Mahony. Discussion? Seeing none. Mr. Bendel.
Aye.
Mr. Kyra.
Yes.
Mr. DePalma.
Yes.
Ms. O'Mahony.
Yes.
And I am yes as well. It's unanimous. We have minutes from November 9th, 2020. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion. Second.
We have a motion by Mr. DePalma, seconded by Mr. Bendel. Discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. Mr. Bendel. Aye. Mr. Kyra.
Yes.
Mr. DePalma.
Yes.
Ms. O'Mahony.
Yes.
And I am a yes, it is unanimous. All right, and that brings us to our first appointment, and I apologize, Mr. West, and we are also joined by Sergeant Gerald Everett of the United States Marine Corps, who are here to tell us about the Toys for Tots program.
Hi, good afternoon. Hi, good evening, Selectman Eaton, Chairman Eaton, and the members of the board, and certainly our town manager, Jeff Hull. Once again, my wife Karen and I are collecting toys to benefit the Marine Corps Toys for Tots program. We've been doing this for the last 24 years, and we really appreciate the support of both the community and the businesses that have chosen to participate. As you know, this year with COVID, things have been a bit difficult for us. We've made a decision not to ask for any of the town buildings. That's why, Mr. Hall, we didn't ask to put a box in Town Hall and the Senior Center, nor the schools, because we figured that, you know, it would create limited, you know, it would help limit the exposure to any type of coronavirus plans. But we certainly want to thank the town on behalf of the Marine Corps Toys for Tots program. I did earlier today, I met with Chairman Eaton, and I did give him a certificate that on behalf of the program, and I'd like to ask Sergeant Sergeant Everett from the Marine Corps if he'd want to talk for a moment about the actual Toys for Tots program, and then I can tell you a couple of things about local events happening here in Wilmington.
Good evening,
I'd be
Sergeant.
more than happy to. Good evening, gentlemen and ladies. I'd be more than happy to talk to you all about the Toys for Tots program. As you all know, it was started in 1947, if I remember correctly, by a Major Hendrick. I'm sorry. He went around multiple LA counties and basically distributed toys to not soldiers, children that he saw in mainly gang-infested areas, and just trying to make a better community for them. The logo itself, the train that you see, with the Toys for Tots on it, was created by Walt Disney, who was a friend of Major Hendrick. At the time, Major Hendrick didn't have a logo built, didn't know what to call his company, and Walt Disney was the one that designed and created the name Toys for Tots. And we carry on that tradition with the logo up to this day. With COVID, we are having some trouble finding toys. There's multiple ways you could donate. You could send in checks. You could go to your local drop-off spot. There's other ways as well. You can go online to the Toys for Tots website, which I'll give Frank, and donate online as well. There's another link you can do, which is called You Give Good, and that is a tax-deductible third party that is designed with Toys for Tots in mind. So you'd go on there. There's multiple toy options you could purchase. Just purchase the toys, and they'll come straight to us at the end of the fundraising period that we put up for it. If I have any other further questions, I'd be happy to answer them right now at this time.
Thank you for your service, Sergeant Everett, and thank you for letting us know what this initiative is all about. So I wanted to open it up for comments or questions to fellow board members. Mr. Bendel?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Frank, to you and your bride, 20 plus years of doing this. We really appreciate it. Despite everything going on in the world, it's not slowing you guys down. Creative ways that you've come up with to continue the strong tradition of Wilmington. So thank you very much. And obviously, Sergeant, thank you so much for your service to our country.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you, Sergeant, for your service. And it was interesting to hear some of the background. I didn't realize that Walt Disney was a part of the creation of it. So, but thank you very much for the service. And Frank, to you and Karen for always stepping forward. What are just 24 years of doing this. Just wonderful that you do this for the children in this community and around Massachusetts. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Mr. Palmer?
Sergeant, I want to thank you for your service. And Frank, you and your wife are doing an incredible job helping some kids. I applaud you. And I wish you luck, and I'll be seeing you very soon down there.
Thank you.
Michelle Mahoney?
Sure. I'm not going to repeat what everyone else has said, but let me know how we can help as always. We're here to support the cause, and whatever we can do to help, we're here for you.
Well, thank you all for the accolades. I appreciate it. Like I always say, Karen and I put out a bunch of empty boxes, and through the miracle of the generosity of the community and the businesses, we end up with a bunch of full boxes, and hopefully we're making Christmas a little bit nicer for some folks. I did want to let you know that we do have boxes still at multiple locations. Market Basket, for example, Firestone, all down Main Street. Go down to Lowell Street, you got Reading Cooperative Bank, you got Esposito Carpet, and again, a bunch of the businesses around town have been generous. But I did want to let you know also that we are running, even through COVID, we have a partnership with a wrestling organization called Lucky Pro Wrestling, and they're bringing actually all of their champions down to take pictures with the kids. I mean, we'll We're going to keep the social distancing as best we can, mask, hand sanitizer, limited access into the office and stuff. And one of the folks that's coming, one of the wrestlers coming is a former WWE star. His wrestling name is Nunzio. He was from the FBI, the Full-Blooded Italians. So just wanted to let you know that. And that'll be Saturday, December 5th from 1 to 3 at West Real Estate, 386 Main Street. More importantly to all this is if people need toys, www.toysfortots.org or toysfortotsma.org. If they need toys, they can certainly, get into the website and get what they need, because, it's a tough year this year with COVID. There's a lot of people that were donating and probably now may be recipients because of, getting laid off or some COVID related entity. But certainly want to thank the Board of Selectmen and the town manager for all of their support, your support. And, if there's any way that, if you guys are around on the 5th of December and you want to, meet a few wrestlers, come on down and just, don't wrestle too much in the office is all we ask. But again, I thank you for the time here at the Board of Selectmen meeting. I gave the certificate that we typically give to our chairman, Jonathan Eaton. So that's just a very small token of appreciation that the Marine Corps has for both the Board of Selectmen, town manager, town government, and the community at large as well. So I just want to thank you all. I hope everyone has a very safe and happy Thanksgiving holiday season. And again, if anybody needs toys, please, toysfortotsma.org, or give us a call. We'll get them in touch with the proper organization, proper people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. West, and Sergeant Everett. Thank you as well. 24 years, Mr. West. That is quite impressive. So thank you very much for that.
Wait till our anniversary next year for 20.
I think they'll give you a watch.
a toy set.
Toy watch.
Take care, guys. Thank you all, and gal. Thank you very much, everyone.
Have a good evening.
Thank you, Frank.
All right, next on the agenda is our public hearing with Karen Rashis, the principal assessor, for the discussion of local property tax policy with reference to classification. So good evening, Ms. Rashis. You are on mute. There we go.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairman Eaton and members of the board. If you don't mind, I would like to, you are all provided a packet, and John has translated those into a PowerPoint so that you can see them on the screen. But this evening that we'd like to discuss the property tax classification. And if you don't mind, I'd like to go through the packet with you and explain it to the board. So the next screen, John. So we're here this evening in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 56, to present the information to the Board of Selectmen so that you may determine the percentages of the tax levy to be paid by each class of real and personal property for fiscal year 21. The Selectmen must vote a residential factor, which will determine the percentage of the tax levy to be allocated and paid by the residential property owners. After careful analysis and review, the Board of Assessors' recommendation to the Board of Selectmen is a classification shift of 1.75%, which results in a minimum residential factor of 0.770680 for fiscal year 21. This shift conforms with the guidelines of Prop 2.5 and is consistent with prior year's tax policies by the board. Adoption of this recommendation allows the town to assess and collect an equitable amount of taxes from the residential, commercial, industrial, and personal property classes. This year was a recertification year, and the assessments were updated and reviewed by the Department of Revenue and received final certification. The proposed assessed values were established by analyzing calendar year 2019 sales with an assessment date as of January 1, 2020, and income and market data. Our analysis resulted in an average single-family residential property value increasing by approximately 0.17%. The average tax calculation is offered simply as a guideline. Individual tax bills may increase more or less than the imputed average. Traditionally, the Board of Selectmen have shifted the maximum allowable to the commercial, industrial, and personal property classes, and that is the recommendation of the Board of Assessors this evening. If we could go to the next screen, John. So I'd just like to, whoops, back up one. Previous, oh, that's it. So this here is a chart to show you what's actually a comparison of what happened between fiscal year 20 and 21 for our assessments. As you can see, the residential class, the increase is 0.4532%. And that includes, so that's different than what I had just stated about the single family bill going up by 1.7% in that, because this includes condos, apartments, vacant land, etc., everything in the residential class. As you can see, the commercial class increased by 0.2255%. The industrial class increased by 4.8%, where our personal property class went down a little bit. However, kind of monumental that we, for the first time, have gone over the $5 billion point for total value in the town, with a total being $5,035,599,779, as you can see there. The chart below does show that we are predominantly a residential community. Next slide. The purpose of our shift is, well, first of all, looking at this chart, you can tell that the residential class makes up 76.5838% of the tax levy. However, if we do shift the 175%, then they're only going to be paying 59.0216% of the burden. The commercial, industrial, and personal property class will make up, they currently make up, before the shift, 23.4162% of the value. And if we shift, they will be paying 40.9784% of the levy. As you can see up top, the maximum allowable levy this year is $90,463,137. And that is calculated from last year's levy, plus your Prop 2.5 year new growth and adding your debt exclusion. Next screen. This screen is probably one that's most impactful to show you what the result of your vote would be tonight. This is the result of what happens based upon what factor that you would select. So in the box in the middle, if you did not shift and we had one tax rate that was equal for all classes, the first row across the top, the resulting tax rate would be $17.96 for both classes. The impact of that would be that the average single family homes tax bill would go up $2,232.96, whereas the average commercial bill would go down $24,763.19. You could shift to 150%. By doing so, that would result in a residential tax rate of $15.21 and a commercial tax rate of $26.94. Again, the result would be an average increase of $838.67 to the residential tax bill and a negative $5,630.51 to the commercial class. If you shifted to 160%, the resulting tax rate would be $14.66 and the commercial rate $28.74, resulting in an average increase of $559.81 for the residential homeowner and a negative $1,795 for commercial. If you went to 170, the residential tax rate would be $14.12 and the commercial tax rate $13.53, resulting in a $286 increase to residential and a $2,018 increase to the commercial class. Or if you voted the 175% with the minimum residential factor of 77.0680, the resulting tax rate is $13.84 for residential and $31.43 for commercial. That would be a $144.06 increase for the residential class and a $3,935 increase, average increase for the commercial industrial class. I do want to stress that these are averages. So some values may go up more than this, some may go down. It's dependent upon what's going on in the market and the result of our analysis. Some classes go up, like raised ranches may have come down this year, but ranches might go up. It's again based upon market value. So these are purely averages, total class divided by the total parcels. Same with the commercial and industrial. So the resulting tax rate, if you chose the 175% shift, would be a 25% increase to the residential tax rate and an 84-cent increase to the commercial tax rate. Next screen. This here shows you a little bit of a history from 2003 until 2021 as to what our average assessed value has done. So you can see the average assessed value this year is 507,014, which results in the $144 increase. This is based on calendar year 2019 sales activity. The market was strong in 2019, but we did not see the increases like we did back in fiscal year 19 when we had a 9.6% increase. We have a range with the Department of Revenue. We're supposed to be at 100% to market value, but your overall analysis, you can be within 10% above or below. So we looked into 2020 to see what was going on when we were establishing the 19 values to be sensitive as to the current market conditions. And our sales in the month of March, starting in March, and it carried right through August, the number of sales that we had clearly were reduced from the previous year. However, sale prices have seemed to maintain strong. It's just the number of sales has definitely decreased. So we wanted to make sure that we were a little bit more conservative with our assessments. So that is why we're seeing only like a 0.17% increase this year. However, if you do compare this to, say, fiscal year 2012, 10 years ago, values have increased 42% since 2012. So we do still have a strong market right now. And our job is to interpret, not predict. So this is based on what happened in 2019. Next screen. This here just gives you a graphic picture of watching the trends of what's happened with the assessments and assessed value equaling market value. You can kind of see when the market was going up in 2005, 6, 7, and when we had the pullback and down into 2010, 11, 12, 13, it was kind of flat. And you see the rise that we've had ever since fiscal year 14. So it kind of makes sense when you're looking at this that they're not my job to predict, but there's potential for things to slow down a little bit in the future. Next screen. This here is a little bit of a history from 2003 to 2012, showing our residential share, the levy share, and what you voted for the shift. So you can see on the left-hand side that fiscal year 21, the assessed residential percentage share is 76.5838, and the commercial, industrial, personal property class makes up 23.4162% of the total. But if we do shift 175%, the resulting share would be 59.0216 and 40.9784. You can see that's a, if you compare that to fiscal year 20 right below, that the shift, that the residential class would be paying a little bit less than what they paid last year, which also contributes to the lower average value at only $144, which is then, Jonathan, can you go to the screen right before, please? I'm sorry, one more before that. You can see our average assessed value, the average tax dollar increase. In 2019, it was 290, 251, and this year at 144 is one of the lower increases that we've seen in some time. Just as a side note, I did do a comparison of Wilmington compared to all of the communities in Middlesex and Essex County. And our ranking in fiscal year 20 last year was number 48 out of 77. So there were only 29 communities in Middlesex and Essex County that had lower average assessed tax bills than Wilmington. In the past, we were ranking around number 33. So we have come down. It's kind of a moving target though. There are actually 88 communities in both counties, but some of them offer a residential exemption and some offer a senior means tested exemption. So it's the Department of Revenue doesn't provide what their average tax is. John, can we go back to the last screen? Thank you. So the Board of Assessors would like to inform the Board of Selectmen also that the fiscal year 21 excess levy capacity is approximately $29,253.38. The residential factor adopted by the board this evening governs the percentage share of the tax levy to be paid by the residential property owners. And if the board votes a residential factor of 0.770680, resulting in a shift of 175%, this would be the most favorable scenario for the residential taxpayer. And that's the recommendation of the Board of Assessors this evening. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Rashes. I do want to open it up to the board, but this is a public hearing as well, so I will at least read the way in which folks can call in and be a part of this hearing as well. The number is 1-646-558-8656. You enter meeting ID 865-8810-0054. Press pound and press pound again at the next voice prompt. You can raise your virtual hand by pressing *9. So with that, I do want to open it up to the board members for any questions or comments.
Jim?
Mr. Bendel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And Karen, thank you very much for your presentation. My thanks to you and the Board of Assessors. This is obviously one of the most important votes that we take every year. In fact, I rely on this replay of this meeting, the second meeting in November, more than any other replay I go back and watch, because I think it's so important that we're able to accurately explain this to residents when we see them in Market Basket or we see them out at the park or whatnot. And so I certainly don't claim to be able to explain it as good as you do. So I find myself going back. But I think that particularly this year, this vote is extremely important given everything that's going on with the pandemic. And whatever relief we can give to the residents, I think we should be doing it. And so I will be supporting the maximum shift as recommended so that we can give the residents some relief and continue with this tradition. Thank you.
Ms. O'Mahony, I saw you raise your hands.
Yes, so I thank you for all this data. I would just ask you, you had referenced kind of where we rank with the residential component. Do you know where we rank for the commercial component? Because I think I asked this question a year ago and we were kind of at the top of that list. And I'm wondering where this shift would put us this year.
So I don't have the fiscal year 21 because many of the communities haven't had their tax classification hearings or have certified tax rates yet to know where the resulting $31 would, the 31.43 would land us. Absolutely, we tend to be in the higher category for commercial tax rate. However, there's many factors that come into play with a tax rate, just a tax rate. It's not necessarily what the average tax bill is on the commercial. And the Department of Revenue compiles the information on residential average tax bills, but commercial are so dramatically different that I don't have an average commercial tax rate analysis that they provide or that they perform, because you're lumping commercial and industrial properties together. that's your small mom and pop pizza stores that are standalones, and that's your, $50 million office buildings. So I don't have a good average. I can just tell you what our average in Wilmington is. I could look up all of the commercial industrial tax rates. It's just they're not necessarily, they're not a one-for-one comparison by community to do that type of analysis. But we do tend to be in the higher tax rate bracket. But I will say that I have done my own little survey when I go out to do inspections on some of the commercial properties, and new tenants that are moving into some of these properties. They might be coming to us from Woburn or surrounding areas. And I ask them, usually leases are a triple net lease. So that means they're paying the tax. And I'll ask, why did you move to Wilmington? A lot of times it's for growth, for expansion, location. And I said, does the tax rate, come into play? And they're like, well, the rent is a little bit higher over in community X. So, and the rent is a little bit less here. So at the end of the day, it really didn't matter to us. It was more the location that they needed in the space. I know that we have a very strong industrial market in Wilmington. So with COVID, a lot of retail and restaurants and hotels are being impacted, but I'm not seeing that in Wilmington because we're very desirable warehouse space and flex buildings. So in that category, I'm not seeing decreases in vacancy or anything like that. I don't know if that helps answer your question.
I think I'm just a little, I understand kind of given the pandemic that we're in, we obviously want in the bulk of the tax revenue comes from residential. I understand why we're doing this and I support it. I am just concerned given the hit that small businesses in town have already taken this year, that we're now going to, again, have them shoulder a little bit more of the burden. And I think, it's not lost on me that that's difficult for those small business owners who own property and are now going to get, with revenue decline this year, are going to get a higher tax rate. I think
I'm sorry, just to comment a little bit on that. Some of our increases in value this year were more the industrial larger buildings as opposed to some of the smaller commercial properties. So at the end of the day, they'll be paying a higher tax rate, but if their value came down or stayed around the same, then they're not going to see as much of an impact either.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments or questions from the board? All right, so I did want to open it up to the public hearing. Mr. O'Neill, do you have anyone on the line?
Mr. Chair, we have no one in queue right now.
All right, so I will give it a minute. If any other members of the board have questions or comments, just let me know and we can continue this discussion. Thank you, Mr. O'Neill.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Bendel.
if I could, through you, just ask Karen if you could follow up with us on the number, maybe just via email or whatnot. I remember last year we were 48 of 77. And then I think Mrs. O'Mahony asked a good question about where we rank with the commercial. If you could just follow up with us on that, that'd be great. Because then people
Sure. So let me just ask this. For that analysis, I can give you the average I can give you the tax rate where we rank, but I wouldn't have the data to say what the average bill is. So our ranking with number 48 is our average single family home tax bill. I can get the ranking for the commercial tax rate, but I wouldn't know what the average is on a statewide basis.
Well, let me just maybe perhaps reframe the question if I could. Just whatever information you've provided us in the past with the ranking, I don't have it in front of me. The ranking, you had the full list. Whatever data you went off of that list, if you could just translate that to this year's numbers, I'd be interested to see how it compares.
Oh, sure. For the single family residential?
Please, yeah, specifically, because I think that's what most residents
Sure.
want.
Sure, I have that. I can maybe work with John and I'll email it to you. I was gonna say I could share my screen. I have it in a spreadsheet, but I'll get you a hard copy.
That'd be great. Thank you so much. And
Mhm.
I do want to just say that I think it's a positive that this shift represents the smallest tax increase for Wilmington residents since, I think, 2012. And then it's down. The increase is down from last year from $251 to $141. So thank you.
Mr. O'Neill, do we have any callers?
Mr. Chair, we do not.
Okay. At this point, I will close the public hearing, and we can either go right to a vote. If there's no further discussion or questions, we can do that as well. I will note, Ms. Rashes, I'd invite you to correct me if I'm wrong here, but any motion would require the actual residential factor to be a part of it, correct? So not,
Yes, please.
do you want both a declassification shift, the percentage and the residential factor, or would you like just the residential factor?
I just need a minimum residential factor vote, please.
Thank you, Ms. Rashes. Well, just comment, thank you very much on your presentation. I know Mr. Perry's on the line as well, and I know that he's put a fair amount of work into this as well. So I did want to thank you both as well as the Board of Assessors. Just to comment on, I suppose, our options for the residential shift, the shift table that you provided does kind of provide, it gives us the average residential and average commercial industrial tax dollar change. I think the most important number to people is the bottom right number on their bill, how much they're going to be paying. And if we went to a shift of just 1.60 instead of 1.75 is being recommended tonight, the increase, the average residential tax change would be just a shade under $560 over the course of a year. And the recommended recommended shift that you have, it increases it, but only by $144.06. So it's less than 25% of what it would be if we had increased that or lessened the shift by just 0.15. So if there's no other questions or comments, I would entertain a motion at this point on the minimum residential factor for fiscal 21.
I'll make the motion, Mr. Chair. No one seems to be jumping to it. That we take the recommendation of the Board of Assessors for the shift of 1.75.
And that would be a residential factor of 0.770680, Mr. Kyra?
Correct.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second. I was looking for the number, Kevin. You beat me to it.
All right.
So we have a motion by Mr. Kyra, seconded by Mr. Bendel. Discussion. Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. Mr. Bendel.
Aye.
Mr. Kyra.
Yes.
Mr. DePalma.
Yes.
Ms. O'Mahony or her pet.
Yes.
And I'll be a yes as well. It's unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Rashes, and thank you, Mr. Perry.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And we are 1 minute ahead of schedule. So we will now welcome our health director, Shelley Newhouse, who is not used to us being ahead of schedule. Good evening, Ms. Newhouse.
Hi, everybody.
We do have Chief Kavanaugh here as well, so I did want to thank you for being here. Ms. Newhouse, Chief Kavanaugh, I saw the numbers you posted. Why don't you let everybody know where we stand?
Sure. We're at about 100 active positives right now in Wilmington and well over 200 in quarantine. We're definitely in the surge, and I will expect to see our numbers keep rising, especially after the holiday. I think a lot of people are testing right now because of the holiday, and all the college kids that are coming home are testing. So we're seeing a large number of testing and positives. And I expect that I will see more in the weeks 2 weeks following Thanksgiving, as will all other surrounding towns and communities. We're really, everyone is kind of in the same boat right now, where, you know, no one's really doing any better than anyone else. We just have to keep practicing a safe Thanksgiving holiday, wear your masks, social distance, and really think about who you're spending time with over the holiday. It's going to be real important so that we can keep our numbers going down, or just staying stable at least for a while. And that's where we're at as a community. It's not great, but it is what it is.
So, Ms. Newhouse, thinking back to March, April, and May, I know initially the numbers that we were reporting included numbers from nursing homes, and at some point, those statistics were bifurcated from the community numbers. But to my recollection, over 100 now is not a level that we had hit back in the spring. Is that?
That's correct. We have no positives in any of our nursing homes right now. So this is just a community number as a whole. So this is definitely the highest number we've seen through this whole pandemic.
Okay, and I certainly, since we've met last, there has been at least some cause for, I think, guarded optimism with some of the hopes for a vaccine that's coming. But certainly, I think you would agree that we are several months ahead, or several months away from that being able to be distributed on a broad scale. But any recommendations that you have to the community that you haven't been making for the past 8.5 months now?
No, just the same things that you keep hearing and hearing over and over. Really, just wear your masks, practice social distancing. I will say that it really works when doing the contact tracing, social distancing, because people that expected that they were a close contact aren't a close contact because they're wearing their masks and they're practicing safe social distancing. So it is working, but I know that you're saying, well, it's working, but look at these numbers that we're having. So like I said before, a large number of these positive cases are from the college kids coming home for their big Thanksgiving break, and people wanting to make sure that they have a negative test before they go to their Thanksgiving holiday. So the lines are really long to get tested. One of the downfalls is I'm seeing a longer time from when you get tested to when we get the results posted. I used to see them in 24 hours, and sometimes I'm seeing them now taking up to 5 days. So that's just a long time for someone to be sitting waiting for their COVID results. Hopefully, if you're getting a COVID test because you're symptomatic, you should be home waiting for those results and not out in the community. That's important.
And Chief Kavanaugh, how is the fire department holding up?
So we're back pretty much to full swing. We have 2 that are currently in quarantine only due to outside close contacts having nothing to do with work itself. Dispatch and I believe PD, we're all back to normal. We are seeing an uptick in COVID possible, I guess we call them calls, we're categorizing due to the pre-screening done by our dispatchers that these people are potentially COVID positive, or at least displaying symptoms of the COVID virus. We keep in close contact with the Board of Health. Shelley and Tracy have been great with us, kind of answering 1,000 of my what if scenarios. So we're doing well. It's getting busy. We're back into the full decon of the ambulance, 2 to 3 to 4 times a shift, full decon of the guys, the equipment. So it is, it's becoming a lot more labor intensive as it was in the spring months, and we expect that to continue. So we would echo the same thing that Shelley said to make sure that you just kind of use your head and understand where you are and who you're around and what the potential is for you either contracting or if you're a potential close contact spreading the virus.
I wanted to open it up to other members of the board. Mr. Bendel, I see you. Or can't wait to get your hand up. So let's go ahead.
I think that's the school teacher in me. I apologize. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chief and Shelley, to both of you. First of all, Chief, I'm very glad to hear that the police department, dispatch, and fire department are all in good health. Shelley, if I may, first of all, thanks for all you're doing, you and your staff. I can't imagine how busy you are. But I wanted to I wrote down three questions that I get from residents the most, and maybe you could just help me walk through them and for the benefit of people watching at home. The first one is, could you just remind us all when you have that number of 100, which we all agree is not good, how long before someone comes off that list? Could you walk me through that? Is it 2 weeks? Is it a certain period of time after a negative test? How long are they on that list?
They're on that list for 14 days. So every day that list can change because someone will come off because they hit their 14-day mark or their 10-day mark, depending on whether they are isolating or quarantining. So every day the number could change. So I could post a new number every single day. That's why I do it like once or twice a week. So, and that's when it says active positives, that means currently right now that they are in either their isolation or quarantine. So if they are in isolating because they're a positive COVID patient, they're on my list for 10 days. If they're quarantining because they were a contact, they're on my list for 14.
Okay, thank you. The second question, the one I get probably the most is, are we red yet, right? And I think last time you were with us, you did a really nice job of explaining that we need to get to about 5% before that might happen under the new metric the governor's office has put out. So could you talk to me about that a little bit?
Sure. Last week we were in the yellow because we were only at a 3%, or I think it was 3.6% positivity rate. This week, I'm not sure. They usually post the data on Thursday, so it's the holiday. So depending on when they post it, we'll probably be pretty close to that 5%. So I wouldn't be surprised if we were in the red this week. And we have to stay in the red for 3 consecutive weeks before we would start thinking about scaling back down to step 1 of phase 3 that we're in right now. So I don't want to think about it. I don't want to jump the gun. So when it happens, it happens. We just go week by week.
And the good news there is, unfortunately, a lot of that, if we do go scale it back, a lot of that has to do on the town side is maybe parks, right? And recreation, unfortunately for us, the winter time. So our park is used as much.
And the number of people inside stores at reduced capacity, gyms. It's all about reducing capacity inside places, inside businesses.
And then the last question I have that I get from a lot of people is about the actual testing location. Obviously, we're seeing more and more testing more than ever. And sometimes I almost think it's discouraging, right? You turn on the news and they show these long lines of cars. I almost feel like that's counterproductive. It almost makes it like people don't want to go sit in that line. And they should be getting tested if they think they need to. I almost wish they would stop showing that on TV, but we can't control that. So what we can't control is just trying to make sure we're relaying information to people that do you have any recommendations in terms of where someone in Wilmington could get tested? I mean, a lot of it's insurance dependent, but do you have any recommendations on where a person should be going?
If you go on Stop the Spread .org for Massachusetts, they list all the walk-in sites or the drive-up sites. It's kind of like the ones that you see on the news for Lawrence, Lowell, Everett, Lynn, Saugus. Those tend to have longer lines. If you call your primary care doctor and you let them know that you need a COVID test, oftentimes they can get you into their laboratories, like at Winchester Hospital or Leahy, and it's by appointment, so you'll get a quicker turnaround. But if you can't do that and you have to go bear the lines, I hear that Lawrence and Lowell have really long lines, but I guess it's like when you hit it, you know, if you hit it early in the morning, you're better off than if you wait in the middle of the day to go.
Yeah, I think it's somewhat discouraging when you see that video on the news, which I know we've all the lines of cars. It's almost like I envision having to go to the RMV. It's like, do I have to take the whole day off from work to go to the RMV, right? Too bad, because you don't want people to think like, well, I'm not going to go get tested because I can't afford to wait 6 hours in a line. You know, when people ask, well, where should I go? I guess, first of all, the first response should be you need to contact your primary physician, and they'll kind of direct on your symptoms or the severity of your symptoms. And certainly they should consult with you if you've had some symptoms. So I appreciate the time. I just want to make sure that, you know, from my perspective, the Board of Selectmen, the little that we can do is to continue to piggyback on what you're doing, put out accurate information, right? They come to us, they ask questions, and so we want to be able to provide them with good answers. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'd like to echo Mr. Bendel's comment to our first responders over the public safety. Billy, Chief, it's good to hear that everyone's doing well over there at the public safety building. It's so important. And Shelley, thank you always for you and your staff for what you do. Just a quick follow-up to Mr. Bendel's first question regarding the testing. When they come off of the list after the 10th day or the 14th day, do they get retested to be able to come off the list? Or they just automatically come off and we're to assume that they're negative?
No, you don't need a negative test anymore to come off an active isolation list. It's when you completed your 10 days, you meet the criteria, you're symptom-free, you're feeling well, then you come off the 10-day isolation. And the same goes for quarantine. If you hit your 14-day mark and you're feeling fine and you didn't produce any symptoms, then you come off the quarantine list. Sometimes people on quarantine will turn into a positive. So then they go from being on the quarantine list to the positive list. In their 14-day quarantine that they've been in for, say, 10 days is now turning into a 10 plus more days of isolation. So it can be a long time that someone sticks around on that list.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. De Palma?
Charlie, I just want to thank you and your staff. Chief, as always, it seems like you're all working together and trying to protect us, the residents of the town. I just want to thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Ms. O'Mahony, I wanted to give you the opportunity too, if you have any question or comment.
No, I again, just continue to appreciate the information that you're putting out on, you know, the Facebook page and social media. I hate seeing the numbers going up, but I guess it's what we were expecting to see. I totally support this year having a quiet Thanksgiving and hope other people feel the same. It stinks, but you know, now is not the time to kind of tempt fate even more than we're already doing, I think. So I hope next week and the week after we're not seeing even more surge in numbers because of people not doing the right thing this week.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Hull.
just to play off of Selectman O'Mahony's comments, I think it's important for folks to take that approach, and clearly we're all COVID fatigued at this point. It's created, you know, significant inconveniences, graduations that were different, July 4th event that was slated to be its 40th anniversary that didn't happen. You know, these events that we've just become accustomed to, including the tree lighting, which of course is not going to be happening. And I know there's been a lot of expression of frustration And it's certainly, we're not doing it to be mean-spirited. It's trying to reduce the opportunities for gatherings that could only exacerbate the problem that we're facing here. So I guess the message that I would just like to continue to put forward is to hang in there. This is a marathon of sorts in terms of trying to be patient and getting through this and making the right choices. Some of the things that, we've gotten some feedback about gatherings over at Yentile and other places where kids or young adults are playing sports or whatever, not wearing masks. To the extent that is happening, people can contact the non-emergency police number. I've been in communications with both the police chief and Shelley about this, and the police do respond, but people need to understand also that, as with any calls, when these kind of calls come in to dispatch and ultimately get relayed to the police, they have to triage those calls versus any number of other things that they could be engaged in, whether it's assisting the fire department on a medical emergency or any number of other things that come up in the course of the day. So, we just encourage people to be patient and ultimately to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Ms. Newhouse, Chief Kavanaugh, thank you as always. Your continued dedication and endurance in this is very much appreciated. So we wish you the best of luck, and hopefully when we see you again in 2 weeks, maybe we have better numbers, but it sounds like we've got a ways to go. So, good evening to both of you. So we're now on to our 8 o'clock appointment. We are joined by John Gregg of Mass DOT. He's here to discuss the Route 38 Wilmington Crossing intersection. It's a crossing that connects what had previously been known as Staples Plaza with Market Basket Plaza. So, Mr. Gregg, good evening. And Chief Desmond, thank you, and good evening to you as well.
Good evening. This is John. I'm happy to be here in front of you all. Chief Desmond had asked me to appear to answer questions that you may have about the operation of the signal at Wilmington Plaza and the Savers Plaza across the street. I don't have a presentation prepared per se, but I can tell you that we've looked at some, oh, there we go, thank you. We've looked at initial crash data that we've had from the last 5 years, and I'm just going to pull it up for my own reference here. I believe we had 8 crashes since 2015, leading up to the present time. Aside from that, we made some recent timing adjustments that I know the chief is aware of. We actually gave some more left turn time to both northbound and southbound left turns. So we're hoping that, because that was one of the initial complaints actually, that there wasn't enough time for the left turn arrow being on. And when I reviewed the plans, it was pretty low, especially during the times when this particular signal is coordinated with the others, meaning one at Wilmington Plaza South and also up at Richmond Street 129. During those peak times, that left turn time was even lower than it would be off peak. So hopefully, I don't know if there have been any recent developments, any concerns, questions, complaints, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may all have.
Thank you, Mr. Gregg. I do want to open it up for questions and comments from the board, but Chief Desmond, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue that we see in this, and we appreciate the fact that green light will be, to take that left will be a little longer, but the issue seems to be once we introduce, human error into it. So once someone still wants to take a left, which they can do without the arrow if it's safe to do so. What we're finding is a lot of these accidents are sort of like an angle crash when someone is making a turn. So it's not really the light that's the issue, it's the human error that we're seeing here. So hopefully this will help a little bit, but it just seems like, without a designated left turn lane, we kind of let people sort of, play chicken. If you want to go get your coffee, you've got to cross those two lanes. And, obviously that can be an issue.
Thank you, Chief. Any members have question or comment? Mr. Kyer, I see you chomping at the bit.
Yeah, I've been, this has been bothering me for probably 3 years or more. I've been raising this issue of a problem over there. When you're taking a left, as the chief calls it, playing chicken, he's right. What happens is that the car in front of you on the opposite side is blocking your view from taking a left. So you're taking your life into your own hands, really, in attempting to go left onto Savers or left into Market Basket. And, we've had some motorcycle accidents over there, which I believe that there was an accident this Saturday again over there, from what I hear, which was pretty severe as well. It's just too many accidents. I know you say 8 accidents in 5 years. I don't know how many accidents we've had this year to tally into those 8 other accidents, but I don't understand why you cannot have a red, yellow, and green arrow to be able to turn. So someone has to wait at a red arrow, and if there's someone behind them that wants to go straight, they have to use caution and wait for the clearing, and then they go to the right and go straight. It baffles me as to why we can't do that. I know there was a memo that came in our last packet that said that, I believe it was, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, it was the pink letter, and it said something that DOT said that it would cause delays. Who cares? It's going to save a life. So for the sake of causing a delay, really? I don't see it. I think that needs to be looked at again. I think you need to have red, yellow, and green dedicated arrow to go left into Savers or to go left into Market Basket on the other side. Something needs to be done, and just increasing the timing doesn't stop that game of chicken. But that's my 2 cents on it. Thank you.
Mr. Bendel?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I have to give Mr. Kyra credit. He keeps bringing this up, and I'm glad he does, because I agree. This has become a very dangerous spot. You mentioned an accident on Saturday. I got a phone call Saturday night from a good friend of mine who happened to be at the scene, who's a firefighter in another community, and was able to render some aid to the young woman in trouble there, but until our first responders arrived on scene and took over. But I just found it very sad and ironic that we were going to take this up just 2 days later. So I don't know if that crash is included in this number, but I'm surprised to see it's only, you got it down as 8, but that's, I'm not going to argue the point. But what I do want to say is that I too support any improvements that we can make there to make it safer, because it is dangerous. Having spent a little time out there holding signs, I'd be lying to you if I didn't say I was cringe every half hour or so when you see somebody trying to take that left. And so I really hope that Mr. Kyra's fears don't come true, that somebody is seriously hurt there. So I'm glad to see that this is on the agenda, Mr. Chairman. And I want to thank both of you gentlemen for being here so we can continue to address this.
Thank you, Mr. Bendel. Further comments or questions?
Just a question, I guess I'll put out there. Perhaps, Mr. Gregg, you might be able to describe beyond the efforts that have been made to this point to try to change the queuing periods, what other realistic options are there to improve the safety there? I think in some prior, if I recall, some prior email exchanges with the chief, there was reference made to a dedicated lane, but then that creates its own set of circumstances. So perhaps if you can share with us what you believe would be options or realistic options that would improve the safety at this intersection.
Sure. Well, safest option would be pretty much what Mr. Kyra had suggested, was the red, yellow, and green arrows for, those left turns on the main line. Along with that, though, what we would have to do is we would have to essentially restripe the roadway to a 3-lane cross section. So your left turn lanes would line up opposite each other, like you do see at a lot of similar intersections. It would be very, I'm not sure it would conform to our standards and our manual if we just went out there tomorrow, let's say, and tried to just put those signal heads up. It would probably create a lot of chaos just in doing something like that. So it's an option to go with the left turn lanes, but we would have to do it in a way that is going to be safe and it's going to conform to our accepted standards. There's other options with possibly splitting the main line phases, meaning that right now you have southbound that moves first, followed by both north and south. But what we would do in that particular case is we would just say southbound moves. Once that shuts off, northbound moves. Nobody else is moving. So they each have their dedicated time. I wouldn't recommend that, only because it would add a tremendous amount of delay compared to just going with left turn lanes, a single left turn lane in each direction, but also note that it would also be just a single through lane in each direction. That's where kind of the trade-off is. It's a question between getting capacity, getting people through the intersection, or, maximizing safety. And, from what I hear, everybody wants to maximize safety out there, and that's absolutely fine. But there are some trade-offs with that. We can look into it further. We did look into it back in 2014. So the numbers are a little bit old, but the results may still be pretty valid today, especially considering that a lot of traffic volumes have been reduced with COVID, especially early on. They really dropped off. Now they have started to come back, but again, we have started to see the volumes tail off a little bit. So I guess the short version of that story is, like I said, maybe those 2014 analysis that we did back then are still pretty valid. And I believe I shared those with Chief Desmond, but I can always forward those to the board, and, with a little bit of an explanation as to, what, I guess, how to understand what those results mean and potentially what the options are.
Thank you, Mr. Gregg. I think just the fact that Mass DOT had to look into it in 2014 is indicative of this is a continuing problem that we have not yet found a solution to. So certainly, I look forward to hearing what actions may be taken to increase safety of folks that are traversing really our most dense retail commercial section of town right now. So unless there's any further questions or comments, thank you, Mr. Gregg. Thank you, Chief Desmond. Wish you both a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And Mr. Hall, communications.
Yes, under communications, the first item is an update on the MBTA Advisory Board, and I would like to turn it over to Selectman O'Mahony.
Thank you. So, as I said at the last meeting, there was going to be a special advisory board meeting that happened on November 16th with the MBTA General Manager, Steve Poflak, to discuss the service changes that they are proposing. So I wrote it all out in this email. I'm not going to read it verbatim. The bottom line for Wilmington is the impact that we would be feeling is the commuter rail would stop running at 9 p.m. during the week and would not run at all on the weekend. This seems minimal compared to the ferry service being completely shut down. So Hull and Hingham are really struggling right now. They rely on that, and there's not regular bus service they're working on. Charlestown also relies on the ferry, but they have bus service, so it doesn't seem to be as big of an impact for them. The reality is they're still at 25% of their ridership because of COVID, and they did go through some of the budget impact that has created and where it's hitting. They did discuss some of the projected building projects that they had planned were being paused, but I did ask about the North Wilmington platform and was told that's not impacted because that funding had already been identified and work had already begun. There is going to be public comment that can be made. I'll give you both links that I have here, but they're voting on these changes on December 7th. You can submit public comments before December 4th. And there's actually an open public hearing by Zoom for the Merrimack Valley area on December 1st at 6 p.m. that anyone can participate in. For the complete list of the changes, the scheduling changes and service changes, as well as the information on how to submit a public comment or to attend the December 1st public meeting, you can go to www.mbta.com/forging-ahead. If you go to just mbta.com, you'll find the link. I think it's through the COVID updates link. It's pretty easy to find, but that will give you a complete list of the projected changes. There are some changes to the ride. For scheduling purposes, you have to give them a little bit more lead time. Thank you for that. You have to give them more lead time for scheduling. There's premium services are shifting a little bit, so there might be a little bit change in the fare cost. The other thing I forgot to do previously was to share with you the MBTA Advisory Board that I'm now a member of. They actually have been putting all of their agendas as well as their Zoom meetings. They're recording them and they're putting them online on their website. So the meetings that I've been attending, you can actually watch if you have a few hours to kill. They also have the agendas. They have not been posting the meeting minutes yet, but my expectation is that they will also be posting the meeting minutes once they're approved. And that website is www.mbtaadvisoryboard.org. And the next meeting is December 4th, and I will be attending that meeting.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Just through you, I wanted to just say thank you to Selectman O'Mahony for attending these meetings and keeping us up to date. You mentioned that they can be a couple hours long, so certainly I know many of us won't be able to sit through it, but so we really appreciate getting these updates. I want to thank you.
Of course.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Carr.
Yeah, a couple questions if I could. Are those both lines that we're talking about, that the service will stop at 9 and that there'll be no weekend for the Haverhill line and the lower line, both?
The entire commuter rail is going to be stopping at 9 p.m. on the weekdays and not having weekend service except for very limited service to very specific areas that we're not on the lines for.
Okay, so if someone's coming out of Boston, in the past, you used to be able to instruct the conductor that, I want to get off in Wilmington, even though there wasn't a dedicated stop.
Mm-hmm.
So are they still allowing that for the commuter?
I don't think the train's even going to be running Mr. Kyra, unfortunately. I think what they're doing is you can actually go on the website and kind of put your trip in and your time in, and they will give you alternatives to the commuter rail. But the commuter rail effectively will be shutting down at 9 p.m. So it will affect, for our purposes, anyone working second or third shift in Boston or relying on those lines for evening travel. They're going to have to find an alternative, and they have been talking about adding extra buses perhaps to Anderson, so that you'd have to stop, either get on a bus in Boston or take the T to Alewife to take it to Anderson. It's not going to be pleasant, but that's really the impact that we have, is that the commuter rail shut down. Everything else doesn't really come through Wilmington anyway. There are going to be the buses to Burlington, the 352 and the 350 line from Alewife look like they're running on the same schedules. So people will really just have to figure out how to avoid the commuter rail if they rely on it kind of overnight from 9 p.m. until I think the first run is 5 a.m. the next morning. The morning shifts are not changing, so they will begin at their usual time. But instead of stopping, I believe they stop at 11 on the weeknights. They'll be stopping at 9, and the weekend service will be completely shut down for the time being.
Thank you. And thank you for taking this on. This is the most information that we've had, or at least I've had in the 6 years that I've been on the board.
It's
So
really
thank you for
interesting.
that.
A lot of the mayors and town managers, so it's been really interesting to hear about how it's impacting kind of the bigger cities around us.
Next on the agenda under communications is a memo from me with regard to the MassWorks grant. I'm pleased to report that there was a Zoom session last week on the 19th. Governor Charlie Baker and Lieutenant Governor Karen Polito, along with the Executive Director, Executive Office of Housing and Economic Development Director Michael Kennelly, announced that there were 35 communities that have been awarded MassWorks grants totaling $68 million for 8 first-time communities, including Wilmington. And the amount that has been awarded to Wilmington is $2,891,000. This is for infrastructure improvements associated with the proposed Princeton Properties development, the apartment complex, 108 units. You'll recall it is in the process to be developed on Jefferson Road. These improvements include extending a sewer line down to this property, sidewalks, street remarking, some safety features. So that's certainly very good news for us. Next under correspondence is a memo from Chairman Eaton. This is a follow-up from the discussion about the draft remote participation policy. You'll recall the intention was to inform the various boards, committees, and commissions about this draft policy and solicit comments. And so Chairman Eaton sent this memo out to those boards and is seeking comment by or before January 7th. Next is a memo from the town clerk with regard to the results from the Attorney General's office review of zoning and general bylaws. In all of the bylaws that were approved at town meeting were also approved by the Attorney General's office. And I'll just go through very quickly what they are. So first is Article 46. This was to change the start time of the annual town meeting from 10:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. Article 49 was an article intended to change the obligations for submission of town council opinions to the town clerk. In conversations prior to town meeting last year, council advised that we ought to identify those opinions that are deemed attorney-client privileged and separate those from the opinions that are for general consumption, so to speak, And the Attorney General's office did comment that we're still bound by the public records law, which we still certainly understand. Ultimately, if there is a request made for an opinion that we perhaps consider attorney-client privileged, the town council and I would have a conversation about potentially bringing that before the supervisor of records to consider it exempted. Article 50 is a change to the inhabitant bylaws with respect to dogs at public beach areas. The bylaw now reads, no dog shall be allowed on public beaches from May 1 to October 1st of each year. And that was approved. There was also Article 58 was an amendment to the comprehensive stormwater management bylaw. Article 68 amended the zoning from general business and to residential for property on Shady Lane Drive. Article 64 amends the zoning from general business and general industrial to neighborhood mixed use property for property at 100 and 102 West Street, which is across from Mobile on the Run. And then Article 65 amends the inhabitant bylaws, creating a new section 55, which bars animals associated with traveling acts from being in Wilmington. There was just a note that there was essentially a clerical error made in the reference. It was referenced as section 5 and not 55, but all of those were approved by the AG, and at this point, the town clerk will post those. Next is correspondence from Attorney Jeremy Cohen, Boston Dog Lawyers, on behalf of Tom and Diane Guthrie. They're requesting a nuisance dog hearing. At this point, I'm in the process of gathering information about the particulars. The correspondence does not offer an awful lot of detail other than what appears to be a noise issue with barking dogs. I've been in touch with the police chief, and he is going to be working with our animal control officer to compile the data and determine whether a hearing is necessary or whether there's another mechanism to address these issues. And then finally, Comcast, this happens every year at this time. Unfortunately, it is always around the holidays when they send out their new pricing arrangement. And as has been customary, many of the rates for the various packages are going up, and these rates take effect December 20th. This information is being conveyed to all subscribers. The final item under communication is a memo from me to the board with respect to license fees for restaurants. There was a question that was raised about the prospect of assisting the restaurants. We all know, and it was talked about earlier this evening, about the challenges that restaurants have been facing in light of COVID. And so I took a look at the revenue that's generated from these licenses as a part of the overall local receipts. So based upon the 2020 revenue that came in from local receipts, which would include everything from restaurant common victulars, alcohol licenses, it could include building permits, plumbing and wiring permits, and so on. We brought in $730,000 in various fees. The amount associated with restaurants, which was the common victular and all alcohol, was $20,100. And this includes nine all alcohol licenses and 42 common victular licenses. So certainly it's as we approach the end of the year, December 14th will be the date that the board will be asked to authorize license renewals. In many cases, the payments have already been issued on some of these licenses, but if the board is so inclined to modify the all alcohol or common victular licenses, now would be the time to do that.
So Mr. Hull, please correct me if I'm wrong, but the deadline for these licenses to be renewed would be a week from today, right?
Yes, November 30.
So my expectation would be that many of those for the upcoming year would have already been received at this point. I think, I know certainly some other communities, Tingsboro, Malden, Holyoke, Dracut, to name a few, have done something to modify or reduce some of their fees. I want to be mindful that we do have an economic development committee, and we have asked that they make recommendations that would help stimulate the local economy. I think that we might want to consider asking our economic development committee to look into ways in which we can perhaps restructure or modify our licensing fees in the way that I guess is best consistent with the charge that we have given them. Given that the deadline to submit these license renewals is 7 days from now, my expectation is, especially because so many of them, again, I'm assuming have already been received, it might be a little bit too late this year. But as we have heard earlier tonight, that we are well into a second wave at this point. Next year, we are certainly expecting a pretty drastic reduction in our state aid. But I think it is worthy of consideration to have the Economic Development Committee looking at ways in which we can modify our fee structure for licenses in a way that is most conducive towards helping the business community here. Mr. Bendel?
Chairman, if it's appropriate, I'd like to make a motion that we assign this this task to the Economic Development Committee and my colleagues, and see if we can come up with a recommendation by looking at what other communities are doing, what options are available, recognizing that this year's deadline is just 6 short days away. But if that's appropriate, you'll accept it. I'd like to make that motion.
We have a motion by Mr. Bendel, who also happens to be the Selectman liaison of the Economic Development Committee, to give himself more homework. Do we have a second?
I'll second that, Mr. Chair. Is this going to be a vote in replace of a board to consider number 6?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I'll second that.
Do we have any further discussion?
I don't want to see the Economic Development Committee have authorization to reduce fees.
They're not. They would be making. They are an advisory committee formed on an ad hoc basis by us. So they would be reporting back to us what they would recommend for our fee structure.
Thank you for the clarification.
Further discussion? So none on call. I'm sorry, Ms. Oman?
I think it's a great idea.
We'll call for the vote. Mr. Bendel?
Aye.
Mr. Kyra?
Yes.
Mr. De Palma?
Yes.
Ms. O'Mahony?
Yes.
And I am a yes, it is unanimous. All right, next is the board to consider item. This is a letter that was drafted by Mr. Hall. I will read it into the record because I think this individual is worthy of us really, I guess, singing his praises. My colleagues and I all were able to attend the Veterans Day ceremony back on the 11th, and Liam Prigmore, who's a senior at Austin Prep, as his Eagle Scout project had raised funds and helped install an honor roll for members of the Wilmington community that were killed in action or missing in action from World War II to the present. So I'll read the letter that we are considering signing that was drafted by Mr. Hollis is to the attention of Senator Elizabeth Warren, Senator Ed Markey, and Congressman Seth Moulton. Reads, the Board of Selectmen at our meeting on November 23rd, 2020, unanimously and wholeheartedly endorsed the application of Liam Prigmore to the United States Merchant Marine Academy. Mr. Prigmore has ascended the ranks of scouting with Boy Scout Troop 56 here in Wilmington and chose to pursue the distinguished rank of Eagle Scout. For the many young people who have participated in scouting, their oath of duty to God and country, duty to others, and duty to self, and the values reinforced through scouting, which included trust, loyalty, helpfulness, and friendliness, help shape them as productive, engaged, and responsible citizens. Those scouts who attain the rank of Eagle are an elite group representing only 3 to 5% of the young adults involved in scouting. In our estimation, based upon the Eagle Scout project that Liam Prigmore completed for the benefit of the town of Wilmington and the character that he has displayed working with representatives from the town, he is at the pinnacle of those who have achieved the distinction of Eagle Scout. Liam contacted the town's Director of Veteran Services, Louis Samaglia IV, in March 2020 to inquire about the possibility of creating a monument dedicated to Wilmington's killed in action and missing in action soldiers from World War II to the most recent military engagements. This project was very ambitious and by any standard, not to mention Liam's ongoing focus with school and his other commitments to Boy Scouts. He developed a project plan, designed the plaque to be installed on the monument, raised funds, contacted local businesses for donations, and recruited fellow scouts to assist with the site preparation. This all took place with the challenges imposed by the COVID-19 pandemic. Liam raised $6,700 to pay for the supplies and the bronze plaque, which includes the name of the 32 servicemen who will be forever honored on Wilmington's town common. Funds raised in excess of the project costs have been donated to Local Heroes, a charitable organization in Wilmington that supports servicemen and women. Mr. Samaglia expresses sincere gratitude for Liam's passion and commitment to seeing this project through to completion. During Veterans Day services at the Town Common, November 11th, 2020 at 11 a.m., the KIA-MIA monument was unveiled for the community to see. We've been very impressed by Liam's perseverance through challenging circumstances, his desire to honor those from his community who have served and made the ultimate sacrifice, and his humility as evidenced by the many people he thanked for assisting with this project during his remarks at Wilmington's Veteran Day services. Liam Prigmore has demonstrated a clarity of purpose to serve others, and we believe is the ideal candidate for admission to the United States Merchant Marine Academy. We are proud to call Liam a native son and believe he has a promising future in service to others. Board members strongly encourage you to nominate Liam Prigmore for admittance to the United States Merchant Marine Academy. Thank you for your consideration. I will note that this was brought to the attention of the board by Selectman Bendel, who had spoken to Mr. Prigmore after really one of the most engaging speeches of our Veterans Day ceremony by Mr. Prigmore. He's really is a young man who is far more mature than he has any business being at this point. So with that, I will entertain a motion that we endorse these letters to our congressional delegation. And I will note that we do need to turn this around quickly. So if we have any ability to sign this tomorrow, that would certainly be appreciated because time is of the essence with Mr. Prigmore's application.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Bendel, second by Ms. O'Mahony. Further discussion?
Just one quick comment, Mr. Chair, if I could. On the very bottom, you're copying Lou Samaglia. I would suggest that we also copy Liam himself on these letters.
I think we can arrange for that, Mr. Bendel.
Yeah.
Mr. Bendel.
Yeah, just for discussion, thank you for this. This is fantastic. I also want to give a shout out to our state delegation. I had the good fortune of speaking to each one of them. All three of them have agreed to write similar letters on Liam's behalf. So Senator Tarr, Representative Robinson, and Representative Gordon all will also be writing a letter. So I want my hats off to them as well.
Thank you, Mr. Bendel. Further discussion? Seeing none, we will call for the vote. Mr. Bendel.
Yes, aye.
Mr. Cairo.
Yes.
Mr. De Palma.
Yes.
Ms. O'Mahony.
Yes.
Okay, you had me wondering, and I will make it unanimous. So we will Mr. Hall, your office will reach out to us, but again, we're gonna have to turn this around pretty quickly because I believe Mr. Prigmore has an interview next week, correct?
Yes, that's right.
All right, so the last board to consider item is the request of Nancy Valley, the Executive Director of the Wilmington Tewksbury Chamber of Commerce, to place nice sculpture on our town common. Let's see. 28-year tradition for the Chamber of Commerce to have local businesses come together to provide an annual holiday-themed ice sculpture. Certainly, we're not having an event for the tree lighting, but it's good to see that the Chamber is stepping forward and continuing this tradition. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. O'Mahony, seconded by Mr. Bendel. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, Mr. Bendel?
Aye.
Mr. Kyra?
Yes.
Mr. De Palma?
Yes.
Ms. O'Mahony?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well, thank you. Now we're on to public comment. Mr. O'Neill, do you have any callers?
Mr. Chair, we do not.
As we did with the public hearing, I'll leave it open for a minute or so.
Mr.
Thank you for
Chair.
putting up the call-in information, Mr. O'Neill.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Kyra?
while we're waiting to see if anybody comes on, do you think it'd be appropriate that this letter go to the letter for Liam, where it says the board strongly encourages you, meaning our U.S. congressional delegation, to nominate Liam for admittance to the United States Merchant Marine Academy? Do you think it might make sense that the board members strongly encourage his admittance to the United States Merchant Marine Academy, that we send it to the admission office on behalf of the Board of Selectmen as well?
I don't see the harm in
I'm just
doing
throwing that out there. We're asking our state delegation and we're asking our congressional delegation to send a letter. Maybe we should do the same and send it to the admissions at the United States Merchant Marine Academy.
So I believe procedurally what we're gonna have to do is a motion to reconsider. So we have a motion to reconsider.
I don't know how everybody feels. Maybe that's not,
But you can make the motion, and I'm pretty sure I have an idea or a hunch as to how this one's gonna go.
Okay.
Why don't you make that in the form? I'll interpret that as a motion to reconsider, to add an additional letter to go directly to the United States Merchant Marine Academy. That we would
on
all-
behalf of the Board of Selectmen.
Correct.
Thank you.
Is there a second? I'm gonna interpret Mr. Bendel's wave as a second. I think you had some audio issues there. Further discussion?
I'm trying to stay muted when I need to.
Seeing none. On Mr. Kyra's motion for reconsideration. Mr. Bendel?
Yes.
Mr. Kyra?
Yes.
Mr. De Palma?
Okay.
Ms. O'Mahony?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. Thank you. So, Mr. Hall, if you could just modify this letter so that we are also directly endorsing Mr. Prigmore's application to the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy and sending that directly to that institution.
Will do.
Mr. O'Neill, do we have any callers wishing to make public comment?
Mr. Chair, we do not.
Okay. I think we had taken up at least that minute, so I think we'll move on to announcements. Are there any announcements? Mr. Bendel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to give one last shout out to Liam. I can't stress it enough how impressed I am with him, and I thank my colleagues and the manager and everyone else for supporting that letter. I think he's very well deserving, and as the chair mentioned, his speech was phenomenal at Veterans Day, which was an excellent event put on by our Veteran Service Office, so kudos to them. And I was really pleased to meet Liam's parents and told him how proud we all were of him, and we wish him all the best. I want to wish all of you a happy Thanksgiving, to you and your families, and to Jeff as well, and Beverly and John who are listening. And I want to thank all people who are serving our country and will be unable to spend time with their family. My great thanks to all of them.
Thank you, Mr. Bendel. Any other announcements?
Yes.
Mr. Kyra? We'll go
Yeah,
down.
I would like to echo Mr. Bendel's comments. Happy Thanksgiving to all. But I had the privilege to be on the Mass Grant, their Zoom meeting for Mass Grants. It was very impressive to see the communities and how the state of Massachusetts is helping out various communities with projects. And one thing, and I did talk to Mr. Hull about this after the Zoom meeting, is that there was another grant that they're doing in the winter time. And I know we discussed it, Mr. Hull, and we thought that maybe it's something to look into further. But it was a very impressive program, and I just needed to mention that, and hopefully we can take advantage of that, the next offering, this winter program that they're offering as well. Thank you.
Mr. De Palma?
I want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving and be safe.
Thank you, Mr. De Palma. Ms. O'Mahony?
Sure. So happy Thanksgiving, everyone. I wanted to just take a moment to congratulate all the fall athletes this past weekend. I think most of them wrapped up. And I know it was not a typical season and they did a really great job. It's, unfortunate they're not going to have their traditional end of the year banquets, but hopefully they know that we are all proud of them. And I just wanted to note, I know it's in the important dates coming up. The Festival of Trees is virtual this year. We will be ramping it up next week. We're in Wilmington. That event, the funds from that event help to do a ton of outreach, including the 15 or so families that we're going to be helping for the holidays. And I did want to just note, and I think I speak on behalf of all of us, that, we don't want anyone in Wilmington feeling alone or in need. So if there's anything that anyone needs in this time, don't hesitate to reach out by email or through social media to get that extra help, because it's tough for everyone and we don't want anyone to feel like they're struggling during the holidays especially. So that was it.
Thank you, Ms. O'Mahony. New business? Anyone with new business? Mr. Bendel?
I just wanted to note that our chairman is going to be another year older before our next meeting, so I couldn't resist giving you a hard time, old man.
I appreciate it. You can give me cupcakes the next time we meet in person. All right, important dates. That actually should have been under announcements, Mr. Bendel, so I'm going to rule that out of order, not new business. Mr. Hall, new dates, or important dates.
Important dates through December 4th, we have curbside collection of yard waste. November 25th is a brush drop off Old Main Street at 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Again, on the 28th of November, brush drop off 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Thanksgiving is the 26th. Town offices will be closed, and also town offices are closed on the 27th of November. Another brush drop off December 2nd, Old Main Street, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Again, on the 5th of December, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. As was previously noted, the Festival of Trees, again, virtual, running from December 1st through the 4th. People can access it via wilmington.org/events/festival of trees. And then December 6th is the Santa Parade, 9 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Next Selectmen's meeting is December 14th, 7 p.m. again virtual. Town offices are closed on the 24th of December at noon. And then the 25th is obviously Christmas Day, and offices are closed. And January 1st, New Year's Day, town offices are closed.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Our salutes of service, I did want to salute Walter Sevener, who was a World War II veteran who served 1946 to 1947 on the U.S. Army as private first class, and his brother Kenneth Sevener is a Vietnam veteran who served from November 8th, 1968 to November 7th, 1972 in the U.S. Navy. Kenneth has a Vietnam Service Campaign and Vietnam Armed Forces Meritorious Unit Citation, the Gallantry Cross, along with the Armed Forces Expeditionary Medal in Korea. So they're both Wilmington residents. I did want to salute them as well. Additionally, I did want to wish all my colleagues, Mr. Hall in your office, happy Thanksgiving. And if I may just take a moment, we can acknowledge that this has been a very difficult 8.5 months. And I am extraordinarily grateful for the flexibility that our town employees have shown over this time. And I would say incredibly thankful for the service that they have continued to provide to our residents in the very difficult and challenging circumstances. So I wish every one of you, town employees, as well as the residents of town, a very happy, safe Thanksgiving. And I think we have some cause for guarded optimism. I think there is a light at the end of the tunnel, but there is a long way to go before we get there. We are going to get there. It's just we have some more difficult times to get through first. So again, thank you to the town employees who have risen up to the challenge in a way that has been extremely impressive, and it is humbling for me to be a very small part of this team. And I do again wish you all very happy and safe Thanksgiving. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion.
Mr. Thomas, seconded by Mr. Bendel. Mr. Bendel.
Yes, aye.
Mr. Kyra.
Aye.
Mr. DePalmas and I couldn't wait to get out of here. Ms. O'Mahony? I as well, and I will make it unanimous. Good night, everyone.
Happy birthday, Mr. Chairman.
Happy birthday, Mr. Chair.
Finally a teenager.